webcast today. We're going to talk a bit about how to leverage the data you already have to make revenue-changing decisions in a retail environment. My name is Todd Harris, Director of Marketing at Select, and I'm joined by Vivek Farias, Select co-founder and CTO. So let's get going here because we have a lot to cover, including a nice demo at the end from Vivek. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do an intro to Select so you can understand who we are and what we're up to. We're going to cover the current state of retail, again, so we're all on the same page of retail right now. And we're also going to cover a little bit about why choice and why comparing products matters too. And then we'll get into the demo scenario. So let's meet Select. Who are we? We're a predictive analytics platform. We're focused on the retail sector currently. We're also based in Boston, soon to be super snowy Boston. Well, hopefully not too snowy. We're venture-backed, and we're founded by two tenured MIT professors, one of which is here with me today, which is cool. We've also had a couple awards and recognitions in the past year. Last fall, we won the 2014 Demo God Award in the Smart Data category. And also MIT CSAIL, which is the Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence division of MIT, noted us as one of their top 50 greatest innovations. And this is really neat because it's alongside some companies like Akamai, and also technologies like encryption and robotics, for example. And to finish off this slide, we've got an expanding customer list, a bunch of current customers, including Sears, Bon-Ton, and In-Q-Tel. And we're going to dig a little bit more into one of those towards the end in the demonstration. So before we get any further, let's cover a few of our solutions. So again, you can get to know Select a little bit better before we get into that demo. We have three main solutions, and they're all based on our optimization platform. And this platform is designed to consume the data that you already have for analysis. What data am I talking about? We're going to hear about more of that in a minute. But the idea of this platform is really to make sure that you have the right product in the right place at the right time across all of your channels. And that includes assortment optimization, which is the one on your left there, as you can see. This helps you build in-store assortments specifically optimized for the individual shoppers in your store. And this takes in vast amounts of data to form a model of future buying patterns and behavior, which will ultimately give you improved merchandise forecasting, rapid category growth, and increased inventory turns. And we also have predictive personalization, which is more for online. It gives you the best assortment of products to recommend to a customer online. And we have markdown optimization, which really helps you understand the impact of markdown decisions on the entire assortment and overall revenue. So let's get into the current state of retail. And I think we can all kind of agree on some of these here. If you don't agree, feel free to chime in. Happy to discuss it. So there's a fair amount of data in retail environments right now. I would say that there's an overload of data, including inventory data, browse history, transaction logs, data from point-of-sale devices, data from all over the place that's leverageable, but it's not currently being leveraged in the way that perhaps it should be. And we'll go into that a little bit more in the demonstration, of course. Online, offline are blurring, and merchants have responsibility not just for online, not just for offline, but for both most of the time now. In addition, merchants, buyers, and planners are under pressure to do better with their allocations and forecasting and buying. So again, we want to focus on all three of these today, but we're going to show you some ways, or at least ways that Select can help you in those regards. Tell me, these concepts that you see here, we have a couple that are going to come up here. Do they still hold up? I don't think they do. I like blue, so my customers will like blue also. They used to work. We sold 100 droids 2 years ago, 200 last year, so we're going to forecast 300 for this year. So that's a hockey stick, right? Just straight up growth. There's probably other factors in play that either could make that grow more or less, perhaps. So no, these concepts don't hold up. It's not that easy, right? So there is a better way. The better way. Let's go over a few of these ways that we recommend. Use the data that we already have. I've been hammering this home over the past few slides. Leverage analytics to make better, more informed decisions. Not to replace your experiences, not to replace your intuition or your gut instinct that you've honed over the years as a buyer or as a merchandiser, but to supplement it. And to really realize that one size doesn't fit all for your customers. I mean, since traditional means of allocation around gender and things like geography and other demographics, they apply, but not as much as they used to. Each customer is unique, has their own preferences, makes their own choices. But how do you know what that is? So it's important to understand choice. It's important to understand how products interact and influence each other. And that's a lot of what we're going to cover today. So I have Vivek sitting right next to me after I've gone through some of these slides, and he's going to cover a bunch more slides to tee up the demonstration, and then we'll get into that too. So Vivek?
Yeah, thanks, Todd. And hello, everyone. Todd graciously introduced me a couple of slides back. But in case you're, in case you're just joining, my name is Vivek Farias. I'm actually one of the co-founders of this company, of Select. And as Todd mentioned earlier in the call, in addition to being the CTO at Select, I'm a professor at MIT. And at MIT. One of the things we like to do quite a bit is kind of step back and ask very basic questions, right? And that stems from the belief that answering these very basic questions leads eventually to technologies that, eventually make a difference, okay? And so really, we talked, Todd used these words, analytics and potentially big data and things like that, right? And so that's not the only company using those words, right? So in fact, when somebody asks me, what does analytics mean? What does big data mean? They're really, they're almost vacuous words at this point. So here's what I thought I would like to do, right? You've taken some precious time out of your day to sort of listen to this webcast. And I want to make a portion of this webcast something about a concept. So as opposed to talking about Select, I actually want to talk about a concept. And this concept is interesting far, far outside, Select or analytics or any of that stuff, right? It's a concept I'm hoping, you'll actually be able to take back with you, after this webcast, and perhaps even start to apply, kind of right off the bat. Of course, it's also a concept Select uses very, very deeply, and so I'll try and kind of, connect the dots as far as that's concerned. But really, my main intention over here is to convey that concept, right? And so with that in mind, right, you're looking at a slide over here, right? And here's what I want you to do. I'm showing you a picture. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think of the answer to that question, at the back of your mind, okay? So the question is this. You're looking at a picture of a gentleman on the screen here. How confident does this gentleman appear to be? Okay, so that's a question. You can interpret it any which way you like. All right. Come up with an answer. Keep the answer at the back of your mind. Okay. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you another picture in a second. Right. And I'm going to ask you a different question. All right. So here's the picture. All right. And here's the question. All right. So the question now that I have for you is, of these two gentlemen that you see in front of you, who appears to be more confident? Right? And think of that answer and keep that at the back of your mind, right? Now, I'm actually willing to bet, and this would be a smart bet, okay? If I were betting money, I would bet money, right? You found it easier to answer the second question, that is the question where I asked you who appears to be more confident, than the first one where I simply showed you a picture of our president and asked, how confident does this man appear to be, right? And what's to be taken? Is that an accident? Right? Is that an accident at all? And of course it's not, right? It turns out that as human beings, right, this is something fundamental about how human beings think and make decisions, right? For human beings, comparisons are fundamentally easier things to do, okay? So when faced with a decision, if that decision is framed as a comparison, right, that comparison is much easier. Like apply this to your daily life, right? Talking to your kids, right? Say, do you like broccoli? How much do you like broccoli? Right? That might be an easy or hard question for them to answer. But then you show them broccoli and spinach, and you say, well, which of these do you like more? Right? So, comparisons are just fundamentally easier to make. As human beings, we're wired to think about comparisons, right? So here's the thing, right? If comparisons are easier to make, then they're a reliable signal of how human beings choose and how human beings make decisions, right? And so if that's the case, it might actually make sense to look at your data and extract comparisons. Ultimately, that's what Select is all about. Okay? From this simple concept, right? Really, we're all about looking at data and trying to extract from that data comparisons that people routinely make. Okay, that's really what we do. So comparisons are easier to make. The second point, right? And I want to talk about the concept more than anything else, right? These comparisons are everywhere. Okay, so in addition to being easier, these comparisons are all over the place in your data. So with that, let me give you a few examples, right, of where you might actually find these comparisons, right? So here's an example. Here's Peter Griffin, right? And Peter is a big fan of fine dining, right? And he's been to both Café Boulud and Cameron in New York City. They're both fairly fancy restaurants. And Peter's been fairly explicit about his preferences here. He's given Café Boulud 1 star, and he's given Cameron 5. This is pretty explicit. Peter's telling us that he prefers Cameron to Café Boulud, right? Doesn't get more explicit than this. So this is a very, very simple example of digital data, and Peter prefers Cameron to Café Boulud. So that was a simple one to kind of get us going, right? And remember, again, what we're talking about is comparisons are everywhere. How do we actually get these comparisons out of data? So this is an explicit comparison. Peter saying he likes Cameron and he likes it more than Café Boulud, right? Like giving the broccoli 10 stars and giving spinach 8 or something like that. Let's do something a little bit more subtle than Peter Griffin's reviews, okay? So yesterday I pulled up my brother's Netflix queue because I don't have one, but I share a Netflix account with my brother surreptitiously. And this is my brother's Netflix queue. So as you can see, Vinay has fine taste in movies, right? His Netflix queue has The Patriot, Expendables 3, SWAT, The Bank Job, so on and so forth. And there's also, strangely enough, The Cosmos in here, which I'm sure is my interfering with his Netflix account. But in any case, right? If you're a digital guy and you're actually you're managing an e-commerce portal, right? You could think of this as a product that your customers are actually looking at, right? Now let's think about something. Okay, let's say that Vinay, who are tracking what Vinay is doing, and Vinay decides to go click on Expendables 3 after he logs in. Okay, what has Vinay done in clicking on Expendables 3? Well, one obvious thing he's doing is he's telling us that he's in the mood potentially to watch the Expendables 3. At the very least, he's curious about it, right? And most e-commerce platforms today, most commerce platforms, will make some effort to actually track this sort of signal, right? We'll make some effort to make sure that, okay, if Vinay just clicked on the Expendables 3, let's actually log the fact that Vinay clicked on the Expendables 3, all right? Are we leaving data on the table? And the answer is actually yes, we are, right? Because Vinay clicked on the Expendables 3, but there's also information in what he did not click on. Okay, so let me say that again. Vinay clicked on the Expendables 3, we could record that. But at the same time, Vinay was offered up SWAT, The Bank Job, Cosmos, so on and so forth, and he chose not to click on those. So what does this tell us? Actually, this gives us a comparison, right? The comparison is telling us that Vinay is perhaps more in the mood for the Expendables 3 right now than he is for the Cosmos or SWAT or whatever else, right? So in particular, as opposed to getting one piece of data from this one click, right? You actually really have more like 5 pieces of data, right? Comparisons between Expendables 3 and each of these other movies. Now, let's take this one step further, right? Let's say that the next time Vinay logged in, you didn't show him the Expendables 3, but you showed him the other movies and perhaps threw a new 5th movie in there, right? And let's say Vinay went and clicked on SWAT. Well, what would that tell you? Well, it would tell you that he preferred SWAT to all those other guys, but you know from earlier that he clicked on the Expendables when SWAT was shown, so he prefers the Expendables to SWAT to all the other guys, right? So here you see the benefit of tracking information related to what people don't choose, in a sense, right? And I'm going to venture to state that a lot of commerce platforms today choose not to actually log this information. The smart people I'm seeing today are in fact logging this information, but they don't know really what to do with it. And here's what I'm saying over here is there are many things you could do with it, but one great thing you could do with it is simply use this sort of data to effectively extract comparisons. Okay.
Actually, we had a quick question, Vivek, from someone. They asked, where is this data? If it's not being logged, or if it is being logged, where does it usually reside?
That's a great question. So, I mean, in the digital realm, right, actually data related to pages that get shown in response to a search, right? So that would be like a generic thing, right? Or pages that get, shown as part of a customized landing page or something of that nature. That data is, for some people, nowhere. That is to say, it's not even archived. And it's not to say that commerce platforms don't support the data being archived. They do. But the thing is, people look at this and say, well, what they didn't click on swap. So great. What do I do with that, right? And what I'm trying to say is, well, and it's obvious after the fact, right? Yeah, there is data in what you did not do. And there's a lot of what you did not do available. So you can actually extract some signal from that. That's exactly what we're doing. And going one step further, by the way, right? Not to say it's hopeless. We have clients that actually are now actively undergoing efforts to actually log this sort of information. And our signal gets that much stronger, right? The more of this sort of, I did not do this, or they did not do this information that you collect, the more of this that becomes available. So let me actually move from the digital realm to the brick and mortar realm, right? So here's a young lady who has the enviable task of choosing a brand of shampoo. So she's looking at the shampoo aisle, right? And let's say she decides to pick Neutrogena, all right? You're getting the idea here already, right? So in particular, let's think about the data you do have in brick and mortar retail, okay? So you probably know what was on the shelf, or at least what was in inventory when this lady purchased this Neutrogena. Okay, so if this young woman here decided to purchase Neutrogena, you would potentially know from inventory logs what was available that day. If you go further and invest in a technology that's actually, tracking what's actually happening on your shelves, you'll potentially know what was on the shelf, or what was on the end cap, or what happened, right? So in particular, if she picked Neutrogena and what was on the shelf was Dove and Aveeno and so on and so forth, just like that Netflix queue, you know that this woman here prefers Neutrogena to Dove to Aveeno. And now let's say tomorrow, right, or I don't know, 10 weeks from now, you stock up Neutrogena. You don't have Neutrogena on your shelf. The same lady comes in and she purchases Dove. What does that tell you? It tells you that she prefers Neutrogena to Dove, and she prefers Dove to Aveeno, and so on and so forth, right? Now, what's the crux of the issue over here? Well, when you discover things like this, right? And again, I've not gotten into talking about words like analytics or big data, whatever. This is just a concept, right? When you discover patterns like this, right, you're able to discover things like, well, okay, so if for whatever reason, right, I choose to not have Neutrogena on my shelf, or maybe I have less shelf space, or what have you, right? I want to consolidate the number of brands I carry. I want to consolidate, if you're in the softlines world, a lot of our customers are in fact in softlines. You want to consolidate the number of brands of a sweater you carry, or you want to consolidate the number of styles, or what have you. This helps you understand demand transfer, right? It helps you understand that, okay, even if I don't carry this, even if I don't carry Neutrogena in this example, it doesn't mean I'm going to lose a massive amount of market share, because there's hope that some of these customers will move over and purchase them, right? So that's the underlying concept. Okay, in subsequent webcasts we can talk about drawing further dotted lines behind these concepts and the hardcore analytics that we do. But this is the concept, and I think it's a concept that's valuable for you to take away. You really need to be asking yourself, how do you extract comparisons from data? Because comparisons are really the key source of signal. Now, with this in mind, right, let me actually make a giant leap and talk about how we were actually able to use these sorts of concepts to help a brick and mortar retailer. Okay, so the scenario is as follows, and I'm going to tell you results in a bit, but we'll intersperse it with the demo. The scenario is as follows. It's a mid-sized retailer. This retailer effectively focuses primarily on soft lines, although they do have things like furniture and so on and so forth. And our task was basically the following. What this retailer wanted to do, right, they have, on the order of 300 stores, right, they wanted to effectively hyper-localize the offering at every one of their stores, okay? So this is potentially a word you've heard a lot of these days. And when I think about hyper-localization, it's nothing special, really. It's something you've done in the digital realm for a long time, right? When I log into my Netflix account, Netflix is at least making an effort to present me with something I like, right? The story over here is when I walk into a store, right? How do I make sure that that store is assorted in a way such that it contains things I like, right? And this is kind of the essence of what hyper-localization actually means. The data we had for this task just stepping back to that picture we just saw with the ladies shopping for shampoo, we had inventory and transactions over time. Okay, and that was in particular also attributed to individual customers. So we knew in particular that it was the same customer making these multiple transactions. So we didn't know anything about the customer actually, but we just knew that the customer was making these transactions. It was the same person making this choice. So what could we do? And by the way, right, in case this is a question at the back of your mind, everybody has this data. Okay, so if you're a retailer, you have this data. Okay, so what was in store at a specific period in time? What was transacted at that point in time? We also had online information of a similar nature. So what was being browsed online, what was being put in shopping carts online, what was being transacted online, right? And the idea was to basically help this retailer very carefully localize its offering across stores, but not just that, right? Because when you say localization, and you put this in the context of of a softline retailer, really we're asking for something much more sophisticated. We're basically asking for, listen, you actually have to find potential, so to speak, across whatever cut of the data you might be curious about. So now what I want to show you, right, is how we're able to take this concept and make it something that was interactive and easy to use for this specific retailer, right? So what I'm going to show you in a second is effectively a demo of a mock version of this exercise. So the data in the demo is completely arbitrary, right? Completely disguised. So don't take the actual numbers and so forth seriously. But the idea is to kind of give you a sense of the look and feel for what these folks might have done. And I kind of want to walk you through it. The objective being simply to show you how easy it is. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do next. We'll switch over screens. So give me a second.
You may see a little bit of a lapse in screens, everyone. This is while we're switching over. And while we pause while you're doing that, there was a quick question that came in around, you're talking about planning stores, and then someone brought up the concept of clustering, and does this replace clustering?
So
does this augment?
I was waiting for this question. Right? So look, there's a lot of people talking about data-driven clustering and things like that, Todd, right? So again, it's almost like the word big data. So let's forget about all that.
I think we've hit our quota for big data.
Yeah, I think we have. So let's forget about that, right? So what is clustering? Well, if I put on, so I've been teaching operations at MIT for most of my career. Forgetting about analytics and data, when I put on my operations hat, right? Why? What am I thinking about? What am I thinking? Why would I even think about a cluster? Well, the reason I think about a cluster is, it actually helps people in their process, right? So in particular, if you put a name to a group of stores, you say, well, these are my preppy stores. These are my preppy urban stores, let's say, right? This might be the name of a cluster. Now, this actually helps a merchandiser and a planner think about that group of stores, right? And really, I've viewed clustering all along as a way for people to organize their thoughts. And so since there's there's a heavy process to this, clustering is important. Now, unfortunately, it can also be a hindrance, right? In particular, if we're going to talk about hyperlocalization, then you're kind of putting yourself in a box if you suddenly start talking about, your preppy urban stores, right? What does that even mean? There might actually be people in those stores that are effectively not preppy, right? Moreover, some of those stores may be preppy in certain categories, and I don't know, they might look like I don't know if boring is a word, but that would apply to me in my best choices.
Because you like Hot Topic, don't you?
Right. But you get the idea, yeah. Right? So they can be limiting. So what does this mean then, coming back to the question? What this means is, when you hyperlocalize, you can, after the fact, ask yourself, well, are there stores that are behaving together? But you can ask that in much, much more granular ways. So as opposed to saying, are there stores that behave in similar ways, which is neither here nor there, you can ask questions like, are there stores that behave in similar ways when it comes to buying red blazers? Right? Now that's actually meaningful. Are there stores that behave in similar ways when it comes to buying loud shirts? That's meaningful, right? And so as opposed to sort of having a one cluster fits all or one clustering fits all approach, what this empowers is a sort of clustering that's completely data-driven, right? But more importantly, it's meaningful. It drives explanations across different classes, different groups of stores, and so forth. So with that, maybe it makes sense to actually just jump to this demo right here. And I apologize if this is one way with you asking questions, just through the interface, such are the limitations of technology, I suppose. But let me try and do a reasonable job at explaining what's on the screen. Okay, so let me actually back up by saying what we're going to see on the screen over here effectively has, for many, many people, simplified an effort that would have otherwise required that they pull reports from 3 or 4 different databases, then get into a long, drawn-out Excel session, which may or may not result in something, and then finally use that to come up with some sort of number, right? You're going to see how we've actually made this visual, simple, and ultimately meaningful, okay? So here's what we're seeing on the screen over here, all right? So what we're seeing on the screen is a made-up retailer with something like 30-odd stores. We're actually at the highest level of this view, where effectively the view is driven by individual products across all of these stores, okay? So let me focus on what you're probably staring at right now, right? These big boxes in the center, okay? What do these boxes mean? So the size of a box over here corresponds effectively to the size of a recommendation. So if the recommendation is around how many receipt dollars do you want to put into the store next Q4, that would be what the size actually corresponds to. But it doesn't have to be in receipt dollars, right? So I think in this case, yes. In this particular case, it's in terms of receipt dollars, as you can see by me hovering over it. But this could be in terms of style count. We have a lot of customers that are very curious about how they should move style count. It doesn't have to be in terms of style count. It could be in terms of unit count, right? So anything that actually, kind of fits into this sort of process that goes between buying, planning, and allocation, right? So the size of the box then is, quote unquote, the size of the recommendation. What is the color, right? The color, in some ways, corresponds to the direction we're moving in, okay? So dark blues, right? And everybody, by the way, has different reactions to this. Just remember over here, blue is good, red is not so good, right? So blue is good. Blue is saying we want to actually put in much more in terms of receipts than we did last year. The white or light blue is basically we're flat, and the reds are places where we really, really want to back off. Okay, so this is a very, very, very macro view, and we're actually looking at all products, every single product, by the way, right? For some customers, they're looking at sort of hundreds of millions of product-store combinations, right? We're looking at this across stores. Let's actually look at this across class. Okay, so we're asking the same question that we just asked across class. And all of a sudden you see that when it comes to class, right, there are some classes that are high classes for our business, other classes that are flat, right, like casual shoes over here, right, and then some classes that are actually quite terrible for our business, right? So good classes, bad classes, whatever, right? Let's dig a little bit deeper. Okay, so let's put ourselves in, in the shoes of a planner, right? And let's specifically say that, our planner friend here is sort of thinking strategy today. And specifically, he's actually worried about jackets and blazers. It's something he's had his eye on because it's a new business for this store, and he's worried about it. Well, good news, right? Jackets and blazers is a blue bucket, right? But that doesn't really tell him much, right? It's blue, great, but what do I need to do to accomplish that level of blueness, right? What does blue mean? So, well, one natural thing, we were talking about localization earlier, we could ask, well, jackets and blazers seems like a good business. What stores does jackets and blazers, what stores would this actually work in? And what stores maybe, would it not work in, right? And so here's that picture. I've actually drilled down into jackets and blazers. We're looking at all products within jackets and blazers, and we're asking, well, where does this jackets and blazers business do well, according to Select, right? Where should we be putting money? And one thing I want to say over here, by the way, right? When you see a blue, and when you see a red, and when you see a white, right? You can say, well, is that just sales velocity? Because if it's just sales velocity, I could calculate that, right? Well, it's not, and here's why. Every buy quantification curve I've ever seen in my life, right, has 80% of revenues coming from a tiny fraction of products. For retailers today, and I think we probably need to dedicate an entire session to talking about buy quantification curves, right? But really, a lot of opportunity for retailers today comes from that tail. Okay, it comes from the tail of products where you've actually bought maybe one unit for a given store. Now, if you have 1 unit per store and you sold out of that 1 unit, what does that mean? Would you have sold 4 units? Would you have sold 6? And what Select is doing behind the scenes, and you'll see more of this in a second, is figuring out, well, actually, right, you sold 1 unit, but really there was room for 4, right? As opposed to just calculating velocity, it's figuring out what the latent demand is. And again, that's driven by these choice decisions, right? It has to trade off across all these guys. So let's continue digging into this, right? And let's bring in an allocation guy into the picture, and maybe even a merchant, okay? So we put these heads together and we say, listen, guys, you know, with jackets and blazers, there's room for the jackets and blazers business. And look, you know, Las Vegas and Milwaukee, right? These are 2 stores that actually have a ton of potential. Let's figure out what we could do in Las Vegas and Milwaukee. So let's actually filter down everything we're looking at to just jackets and stores data for Las Vegas and Milwaukee, okay? And in fact, you know, let's look at what this potential looks like across brands, all right? So what are we looking at on the screen? So I did that fairly quickly, but you saw that it was just clicks, okay? In a couple of clicks, I was actually able to pull up the potential for the jackets and blazers business, right, in 2 stores in my chain, and look at the potential across brands. Okay, I could do it across whatever attributing you have. Okay, there are some of our customers want to look at this by silhouette, by color, by size, what have you. I can show that to you in a second. But let's stick with this. We're looking at the jackets and blazers business, and we're looking at its potential split by brand. Now you're seeing a new color on your screen, right? Hopefully you're seeing you know, a couple of yellow boxes, and yellow is neither blue nor red. So what is yellow, right? Well, what yellow is the following. We're saying that, for instance, last year you did not stock IZOD at either the Las Vegas store or the Milwaukee store. We actually think that there's room for IZOD at that store. Okay? Same story for DKNY. You didn't carry it last year, but we think there's actually room for that business, right?
In fact, can you spell it out? How do we know that?
How do we know that? Very good, right? So we know this in very simple terms, right? Really, we know this as follows. Essentially, we are building models for individual customers in this chain. Okay? So every single customer in this chain, we're building a model for that customer. But the problem is, if you just looked at an individual customer and tried to build a model just off of that customer's data, we can already tell that's hopeless, right? If this is, for instance, soft lines, you're going to the store twice a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year. I don't have enough data. Rather, what we're doing is, by looking at the comparisons, the choices this customer makes, and looking at the choices other customers make, we're actually able to put customers together based on their choices. Okay? So customers that choose in similar ways are customers we can aggregate, so to speak, to think about. And so we've concluded that, look, there are folks in Las Vegas and Milwaukee, right? And of course, just remember, don't take the name seriously, right? It's made up. But we're concluding that customers in Las Vegas and Milwaukee, right, that make similar choices as customers in other places that have stock IZOD blazers, right? Or IZOD jackets. I think this is women's jackets primarily, right? Or something like that, right? That's stock IZOD jackets. And so we're actually able to say, well, okay, maybe these people will actually modify their shopping basket and go buy IZOD, right? Of course, ultimately, by the way, Todd, this is borne out by data, okay? Ultimately, this is borne out by data. And I want to show you what the impact of doing this is in a bit, right? But let's just stick with this, right? So, okay, next challenge, all right? You're looking at the screen and you're saying, great, Vivek, you're telling me I've got to pour tons of money into the jackets and blazers business. But you know what? I don't have that much money to put into the jackets and blazers business. I've got to back off a little bit, right? So this is just sort of like a blue sky picture of what could happen. What if you want to throw a constraint at this? Okay. What if you wanted to say, right, listen, all well and good, but the jackets and blazers business can't be more than 10% greater than where it was last year. Maybe you want to say things like Casper can grow as a brand. Maybe you want to say Rafaela, can grow much more as a brand. Maybe you want to say IZOD can't be put in the store. Things like that, right? We could do all of this. It's literally a couple of clicks. But let's just deal with the most basic of constraints, right, for a second, which is, look, you're telling me to spend all this money. I'm not going to let you spend more than 10% more than what you spent last year. Well, if you do this, all these can't be blue. Not everybody can be a winner. And, if you're a merchant, if you're an allocator, if you're a planner, right, you've dealt with this issue, right? Everybody wants to be blue, but how do you actually make that trade-off? And of course, that trade-off needs to be informed by how people would choose, how demand would transfer. And so let's actually do that, okay? So what I'm going to say is, right, you can't spend more than 10% of what you spent last year, and I'm literally going to hit optimize. Now, this sort of task used to be an optimization that, first of all, for a typical, this used to be an optimization that was typically available, only in the world of groceries and things like that, right? And running an optimization of this nature would typically have taken days. As I look at my screen, it's done in seconds, right? The power of doing this is apparent. You can try a whole bunch of different scenarios, and you can look at the impact of those constraints. By me simply saying that you couldn't spend more than 10% of what you did last year, right? We were expecting that the big stars would jump out of the mix, right? And we actually, although, for instance, as we're seeing here, Calvin Klein, which was blue in the earlier screen, is now red, right? That's not because Calvin Klein is not a good brand. They're a fine brand when seen in isolation. When considered against the constraints faced by these stores, we actually have to take away from Calvin Klein, maybe to give to stars like Izod. That yellow box got a lot bigger, right? Or Michael Kors, a box that's really, really blue, and so on and so forth. So you're actually, really sort of seeing the power now of drilling deeper and deeper, right? And by the way, we wouldn't have to stop here, right? I could look at the same thing, and somebody came to me and said, well, what does that look like across colors? Let's look at the same thing across colors, right? And all of a sudden you say, it looks like this across colors, right? Black is not good, blue is great. What would this look like across size? And stories like that. Now, here's the thing. We can actually keep playing with this, and again, for the webcast, we do deep dives onto this, onto this tool. But one of the things is, okay, after you're done with all of this, right? What have we accomplished? We've actually gone through something that would have otherwise have taken days, with dubious results sometimes, right? And crunch that into something that, first off, is using very, very sophisticated ideas behind the scenes, behind those concepts I was talking about, but ultimately delivering those ideas in a very, very simple, very, very intuitive form factor, which I have never seen anybody take more than 20 seconds, maybe a minute, to pick up this interface. And the best thing is, after they're done, they can pipe these outputs to their favorite systems, the JDA, MID, what have you, or even simply download an Excel report. I'm going to just download the result of everything we did, and as opposed to creating an Excel sheet, that's there for me right off the bat, right? So, let me actually stop with this demo right here, right? You're kind of getting a sense over here of, what it actually means to sort of take this information about comparisons and use this information to your advantage, to spot opportunity, to figure out, for instance, that 24 Ws are sizes we're not stocking at these stores, and there's room for that size, right? Or that Izod was a brand you weren't carrying, and you need to carry Izod. Or that, although Calvin Klein looks good by itself, it's really not as good as a whole bunch of other guys, and so we actually need to shrink the Calvin Klein business to make room for other businesses, right? So with that, let me actually transition back to, the slide deck itself, to show the effect, so to speak, of using an idea like this, at the retailer I was talking about. Okay, so the retailer I was talking about, and this is one of our, one of our early customers actually. This is rolled out across all of their stores. They used this approach. Okay, and here's what ended up happening, right? They ended up spending the same amount of dollars, okay, over a very carefully calculated test period, the same amount of inventory dollars in these stores, and they were able to grow their revenue compared to trailing periods, compared to control stores, right, year over year, by something like close to 7%, over 6%, 6.65% to be precise, right? In fact, what we had predicted, what these tools predicted, was a growth of 6.43%. And so that makes another point. These sorts of growths are predictable, right? Even in businesses like Softline, all right? So what should you be taking away, right? Because we're kind of nearing the end of our time over here, and I kind of went nuts with that demo over there because I like it so much. It really, I love it. It makes a difficult task really simple, right? But what have we learned here today? I want you to take away two things, okay? First, let's forget about select. One key message I want you to take away is that you are sitting on a treasure trove of data, right, when viewed in the right way. That is to say, people make comparisons. And if you're able to extract these comparisons from data, you have a big, big advantage. So go out there and go collect those comparisons because it's valuable, okay? The second thing, and the second point is sort of select related, is that, one of the things, and I'm very proud of this, we've been able to take a very difficult concept, a fairly complex concept, and fold it into a tool that a broad organization spanning merchandising, planning, and allocation can wrap their heads around. When I look at this and people ask me, well, Vivek, is this an assortment tool? I say no. When I say, oh, is this an allocation tool? No, it's not. Rather, the way I think about this is the brain. Okay, this is the brain for the process that ought to be driving the harmonization of buying, planning, and allocation. If I'm going to harmonize these processes, I have to harmonize them around a central platform. That central platform has to be easy to use and needs to surface valuable insights. Otherwise, we're back to square one. That's really what we're about. So let me actually stop there.
All right, awesome, Vivek. Thank you so much. We do have questions, but like I said in the chat area, guys, I'm going to answer those afterwards because we are running out of time here. There was a question around how we integrate with inventory management solutions and ERP solutions and things like that, and how we consume the data, how long it takes. We could go into a whole nother, like you were saying, Vivek, a whole nother webcast on this stuff, and we actually will. So, but I will get these answers back to everybody. I will answer it in a way that everyone can see it, hopefully answer most of your questions. And if you do have more questions, just send it to info@select.com. My email is todd@select.com. Vivek is Vivek@select.com. So pretty straightforward. If you want to grab the slides, I put them up in the interface, so you should be able to download them there, or you can go to SlideShare. Just go to slideshare.net/select, and you can see the deck there if you don't want to have them as a hard copy. Other than that, thank you for everyone's attention today. Thank you for being here. Vivek, thank you for taking us through the demo.
Sure.
It was really cool. We'll see more of that over the coming months as it evolves, of course. And again, I will send the answers to the questions, or at least proposed answers to the questions, out along with the recording in the next 24 to 48 hours. So again, thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day.